So for our final set of videos in our unit 4, we're going to be talking about the derivatives of inverses. And we're going to start off with a review of what is an inverse function, so we all know what we're talking about. All right, so an inverse function is just a way of reversing, so inverse and reverse of the function that you just performed. All right, the notation for an inverse is we put this little -1 in the superscript there. All right, just notice there's a difference between this, where we do this with variables, x to the -1 is 1 over x. If you want to do that with a function for some reason, you would put the -1 there after the parentheses. But whenever the -1 is right next to our function name, that f, that represents the inverse of the function. And it's not just going to be 1 divided by the function. There's more that goes into finding an inverse. All right, so this is different than that. All right, and here's the important thing with our inverse functions. Like I said before, they reverse what our original function does. So if our original function, we plug in a and we get out b, our inverse does the exact opposite. Now we're going to plug in b and get out a. All right, so I just think of inverse as switching the two pieces. All right, the y value becomes the x value, and the x value becomes the y value. All right, so that's it's happening with an inverse function. And just one other thing that'll be kind of important in terms of calculus is that if you were to graph a function and its inverse, the reflections over this diagonal line y equals x. All right, so this diagonal line here, all right, that's the line y equals x. My original function, let's just say it's the red one. That's just my original function. And if I just kind of tilt my head to the side and flip it over that diagonal line, I'm going to get the graph of the inverse function. So there's a relationship between the graphs of my original function and the inverse, which is going to help us when we talk about derivatives, which are slopes of tangent lines. So this tangent line here, oops, let's do it in different thing. This tangent line here is going to end up being related to this tangent line kind of over there. So as it gets flipped across, there's a relationship between the tangent lines. All right, so that's a real quick review of inverses, just knowing the main things that it kind of switches the inputs and outputs, and these this flipping over the diagonal line is how the graphs work.